All right, let me tell you something about ghosts. For the most part, they have a terrible work ethic. I should know. My name is Jamie, and I'm the host of a moderately successful podcast called Myth Guided, where I travel to supposedly haunted places and 9 times out of 10 find a perfectly logical explanation that is way less exciting than a spectral haunting. Last week, I investigated the weeping waitress of Dolly's Diner. Turns out, the ghostly sobbing everyone heard was just the sound of a very old, very dramatic ice machine giving up on life. The week before that, the phantom of the old opera house was a family of raccoons who had learned how to play the xylophone badly. So, when an email landed in my inbox with the subject line, "You have to check this out," I was skeptical. But the story was different. It was about a stretch of the old forgotten highway, Route 44, a notorious cellular dead zone. The legend said that sometimes, if you pulled over at just the right spot, your phone would suddenly jump to a perfect full-bar 5G signal. The emailer claimed it was a ghost, a spirit they called the Signal Man, luring people in. I read that part out loud while recording a new episode intro. "A ghost with a better data plan than I have?" I quipped to my microphone. "Folks, this sounds like a job for me. I'll pack some snacks, drive out to this supposed dead zone, and I promise you, by next week's episode, we'll find out this ghost is just a misplaced cell tower from 2007. Stay tuned." The drive out to Route 44 was actually kind of nice. The highway was a forgotten ribbon of asphalt winding through a dense state forest, the trees creating a thick canopy overhead. As promised, my phone's signal bars dropped one by one until the dreaded "no service" message appeared. A true dead zone. Perfect. I pulled over, put the car in park, and started my audio recorder. "Okay, Mythheads, Jamie here on location. It's quiet, it's creepy, and my phone has about as much connectivity as a potato. I'm going to give our signal man about an hour to show up before I declare this myth officially busted." I waited. I ate a bag of chips. I listened to the forest. Nothing. An hour passed. I sighed, ready to pack it in. I picked up my phone to take a picture of the "no service" icon as proof for the show's social media, and then it happened. The screen flashed to life. In the top right corner, 5 perfect, solid bars of 5G signal appeared. My jaw dropped. Before I could even process it, my music app opened on its own. It didn't play anything from my library. Instead, a crackly, tinny recording of a mournful folk song, something that sounded like it was recorded on a wax cylinder 100 years ago, began to play. Singing voice, faint and old-timey. "The signal lantern shines so bright to guide the midnight train." The song played for 10 seconds. Then the screen went black. Not just off, dead. Utterly, completely wrecked. I sat there in the profound silence of the forest, my heart hammering against my ribs. For the first time in the history of my podcast, I had no logical explanation. The haunting, as it turns out, was less terrifying and more incredibly annoying. It was like being followed by a ghost with a very specific, very niche set of interests. My brand new smart TV, which I normally used for judging fictional baking competitions, apparently developed a deep and abiding love for black and white westerns, specifically any western that featured a train. My car radio was worse. I'd be listening to my favorite indie band, and suddenly the music would cut out, replaced by the rhythmic ding-ding-ding of a railroad crossing. My GPS, bless its heart, kept trying to reroute me to abandoned train depots. It was maddening. This wasn't a haunting. It was a series of highly specific, deeply inconvenient technological pranks from beyond the grave. The annoyance turned to genuine shock one evening. I was on my porch, trying to enjoy the sunset, when I saw him. At the end of my long driveway, standing under a streetlight, was a figure. A tall, sad-looking man in a dusty, old-fashioned railroad uniform. He was holding up an old-fashioned lantern, the kind with a wire handle and a glass case. But the light from the lantern, it wasn't a warm, flickering flame. It was a brilliant, pure white light, as bright and intense as a modern LED flashlight. He looked directly at me, his eyes filled with a profound, century-old sorrow. And then he just vanished. In that instant, everything clicked into place. The full bar 5G signal, it wasn't a signal at all. It was him. It was his lantern. His spiritual energy was so strong, so focused, it was overloading the sensitive electronics in my phone, which my device misinterpreted as a perfect signal. He wasn't a digital phantom. He was an analog ghost in a digital world. And I realized with the jolt that went right through me that he wasn't trying to scare me. He was trying to get my attention. The next day, there was no joking. I turned off my podcasting microphone and turned on my brain. This wasn't a bit anymore. This was a story, a real one. I needed to know who he was. I started with the history of Route 44. And there it was, in a dusty county planning document from the 1920s. The highway had been built directly over the decommissioned tracks of the old Silver Creek railway line. I spent the next 3 days buried in the town archives, squinting at microfilm and breathing in the dust of forgotten history. And I found it. A headline from an 1893 newspaper, "The Great Silver Creek Crash, Tragedy on the Midnight Express." A passenger train had derailed at a switch point, a catastrophic accident that claimed dozens of lives. The official investigation, concluded with swift and damning certainty, placed the blame squarely on one man, the signalman on duty that night, who had allegedly failed to warn the train of a damaged switch point. His name was Silas Croft. He had died in the crash, his body found near his signal post, his name forever tarnished as a negligent fool who had caused the deaths of innocent people. I stared at the grainy photograph of the man in the newspaper. It was him. The sad eyes, the stern jaw, the signalman. My ghost had a name, and I was starting to think he didn't just have a story. He had an injustice. He wasn't haunting me. He was recruiting me. I was the first person in over a century who had stopped and truly answered his signal. And now he was desperately trying to lead me to the truth. The nature of the haunting changed after that. It was no longer a nuisance. It was helpful. I'd be scrolling through digital archives on my computer, and the mouse cursor would move on its own, circling a specific name in a witness manifest. I'd be looking at an old map of the railway line, and a single location, an old abandoned church, would faintly begin to glow on the screen. Silas was guiding me. We were a team, the living and the dead, solving a 100-year-old mystery together. His clues led me to that very church. In the back room, and a dusty, forgotten parish ledger, I found it. Tucked between records of baptisms and burials was a letter, its envelope yellowed and brittle with age. It was a deathbed confession, written in a shaky hand in 1915. It was from a man named Jedediah Thorne, a foreman for a rival railroad company. He admitted everything. He had sabotaged the track switch that night, hoping to cause a minor, embarrassing delay for his competitor. He never intended for the crash to be so deadly. And then I read the last lines, my heart pounding in my chest. It read, "I saw him. I saw Signalman Croft. He was on the tracks, waving his lantern like a madman, running towards the train. He saw what I had done, and he was trying to stop it. He was a hero, and I let the world call him a villain. May God have mercy on my soul." I held the letter in my hands. the proof, the truth. Silas Croft wasn't a failure. He was a hero who had died trying to save those people. I went back to my studio. I sat down in front of my microphone, but the man who spoke wasn't the funny, wisecracking host of Myth Guided. It was someone else. This week's episode is different. I began, my voice thick with emotion. This week, we're not busting a myth. We're telling the truth. I laid out the entire story. I presented the evidence. I read Jedediah Thorne's confession aloud, his century-old words filling the air. I told the world the tragic, heroic story of Silas Croft. It was the most important broadcast of my life. The episode went viral. It was bigger than my silly podcast. It was picked up by local news, then national outlets. The story of the heroic signalman captured people's hearts. The town of Silver Creek, moved by the revelation, officially re-examined the historical records. Silas Croft's name was cleared. They erected a small, beautiful bronze memorial near the old railway line where he had given his life. Weeks later, I drove out to Route 44 one last time. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I got out of my car and just waited. The air was peaceful. And then I saw him, standing by the side of the road, near the new memorial. It was Silas. He wasn't sad anymore. He was standing tall, a faint, peaceful smile on his face. He looked at me, and I felt a wave of pure, profound gratitude wash over me. He raised his lantern in a final silent salute, and then he and the brilliant light he carried gently faded away into the twilight, finally at peace. My podcast is more popular than ever now. I still approach the myths with humor, but it's different. It's layered with a deep sense of empathy, a purpose I never knew I was looking for. I'm not just a debunker anymore. I'm a storyteller. And sometimes, if you're very, very lucky, you get to tell a story that matters. The final shot of my new intro is a picture of Silas's memorial. I found my true calling out there on that lonely road. It turns out, my job isn't to prove that ghosts aren't real. It's to listen when they have something important to say.